As a structured finance focused headhunter, I look at the people side of things and I see sort of how talent pools are evolving, and I see sort of what's being desired. That crystal ball I sort of touched on earlier, it's like I think AI is evolving so fast, it's so hard to say. But if I just talk high level, if we talk about job descriptions, if we talk about what employers are looking for, if we talk about what people are thinking that they need to do, I think kind of some of the key skills that you need to be thinking about, obviously in this pool, we're talking about sort of AI and quantitative and data science and engineering backgrounds. Okay, that's great, but it's like, how can you use it? How can you get that data, see it, and actually interpret it, analyze it, and be able to provide that right advice to investment teams, to like the market, if you're providing data to external people. And I think being able to understand, interpret, and communicate it in the right way, I think that's where it's going to need a human. Like, just like I think pretty much everyone has talked about, where you're going to need a human there. The ability to also understand like the accuracy of data and actually is it right, and that is, you know, are you using the right data pools? And I think it's also like, this is where people with investors, you'll have your edge because you might choose the right accuracy, the right data pools basically, which are best, you feel are better to accurately reflect the market. If I ask a question to the and this isn't open to anyone who wants to get hold of the microphone. Daniel, it's not just you. So what skills become more valuable if AI handles more of the extraction, drafting, comparison, and first pass analysis? Who would like to answer this one first?
I'll go. Yeah, I think, look, we hire technology people mostly, and also the people with financial backgrounds. They also always have to do a lot of programming, or let's say not programming, but you have to have technical skills. Yeah, what's going to change a little bit, I think, in that sense, is that people who couldn't write code before probably now have a bit more, tools at their disposal to write more code. Is it going to be good code? They cannot judge it really, so you need in the end also some people who can actually really write code. So those are going to be experienced developers. So it's an interesting discussion. Also a discussion to have is, okay, how much are you going to pay somebody and how much credit are you going to put extra on top of it in terms of token use, for instance? Also something to look at. Something very popular to talk about, I think mostly in the US, is burn as much on tokens as you can. So that's also an interesting perspective. If you hire someone but don't have that discussion, yeah, I think that can be expensive. So it's an interesting one to within a changing market now to really look at those things. Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of like, actually you can have in this ecosystem, you've got the kind of quandary if you can have someone who's a pure developer and someone who's a pure structured finance expert. If you can mesh that all together, which is always hard to get to see where things are. My favorite structured finance expert, Frank.
You only say that because I'm here. He says that to everyone. But look, I mean, I give you an example. Sorry, I keep switching from hat to hat, but in my job at Cheyne, we hired a junior, and the requirement was there's no way we hire a junior that doesn't have like a bit of tech background. And it's a bit complicated because you want a finance guy with some tech development. I mean, it starts to be a bit difficult, right? Like how many requirements you're making. But the reality is I don't think we would ever hire any junior that doesn't have some tech background and like a pretty heavy power user of AI, right? But to your point, the problem is they still need to learn to be able to check what they're doing, right? Because if we ask them to do something, they put in the AI, come back and send me the report, that's not greatly helpful if there hasn't been any verification. So, and by the way, it's a massive issue right now, which is how do you get junior to learn the job when they can just use AI to do it for them? And how are we going to have some sort of teaching issue, to upskill people because they just be so reliant on AI? Luckily, I don't have that issue because I had to suffer for 20 years learning before using AI. So hopefully I can check roughly what's happening. But that's a bigger issue for junior.
And I think kind of that intellectual curiosity, it's actually so important because that analytical mindset, that critical thinking. I think that's the skills of the future. And I think kind of for any developers that are listening or watching this, I think it's like actually structured finance is a great ecosystem to be in. There's careers which are fantastic. We've all seen it. And I think kind of constant learning and understanding the technical nuances on there as well. Hannah, anything to add on that? Or, yeah.
I just hope that the entire industry doesn't just move to vibe coding. No, I mean, if we look at Moody's, I think something we're seeing, to kind of revert back to the more credit part of this, I think we're seeing a much higher degree of sophistication in every transaction. So we're having to bring, 6 analysts to the table rather than 2. What we're doing internally is we have a huge data estate at Moody's and a very, very strong engineering team. So we're utilizing our engineers to make life easier for analysts, because, as I'm sure those of you who have worked in large organizations, teams that sit next to each other often don't use the same data. So we're trying to streamline our data flows and just make life a lot easier for our analysts.
I can imagine the sheer amount of data that Moody's has access to is quite useful in our evolving world.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, 630 million companies I think we house data for now.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's quite impressive.